Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Lake, co-founder of the criticalconservative.com and host of the affiliate podcast show. Today we wanted to ask the question that many of you have been asking yourselves or have heard on Facebook: did Sarah Brady, the mother who was arrested at the playground, deserve to be arrested? Now, we're going to take a particularly interesting stance considering that most of the conservatives in Idaho are of the opinion that she shouldn't have. We actually do believe that it was completely merited. We're going to go into that. It just kind of makes sense considering the fact that of the situation that she was arrested for trespassing upon the playground when it was closed by the city. But we're going to go quickly review the scenario on what had happened. Basically, she and a bunch of other mothers had decided to organize together to go down to the playground and to be able to spend the day there with their children. At the time, the Idaho Freedom Foundation, at the time of the arresting, described it as a playdate protest of the Governor Little's stay-at-home order that he had promulgated in the state of Idaho. Now, that has since been retracted. Sarah Brady has made the argument that she never planned on a protest, which is interesting for reasons that we'll see going forward. But regardless, she and her friends and their children went down to the playground. They were confronted by police officers and a park employee who asked them to move back onto the grass. The park itself was open, but the playground that was associated with that park was closed. That they could do whatever they wanted on the grass, but that the playground was not open to the public. After which, a series of disputations and contention arose between the individuals that were there and the police officers. And it escalated to one point in which Sarah Brady challenged the police officer and told him that he should just arrest her. And so eventually, after a while of trying to convince this group to move onto the grass and Sarah Brady almost verbally assaulting the police officer, she was arrested and escorted off the premise. And a lot of people are upset with this. At the time of the recording, people commented that she was in front of her kids. Were they really going to arrest her in front of her kids? And the truth of the matter is, yes, we don't hold off arresting individuals simply because they're in front of their children, right? We don't allow criminals, individuals who violate the law, either in a misdemeanor-like fashion in this particular case, or in a felony fashion, the ability to escape the influence of the law simply because they're around their children. And it shouldn't be that way. And so that's been part of the arguments that have been promulgated. The ones that I've noticed have taken on the greatest measure are arguments that it was a stupid law, that she shouldn't have been arrested for going on the playground shouldn't have been closed, and that it somehow violated her constitutional rights. We'll start with the fact that it was a stupid law. I know a lot of people are of the opinion that since it's public grounds, it's paid for by tax dollars, that it should be open to the public whenever they would like. And that's simply not the case in pretty much every situation. Public pools are closed during the night. We don't allow people who are members of the public to access certain public facilities at any time that they so desire, right? I mean, public bathrooms are paid for by the public, but we would certainly hope that individuals would respect it when those bathrooms are closed for whatever reason. Maybe it's maintenance, maybe it's for repairs. For example, in the case of public pools, again, if an individual were to throw up in the pool, we would close the pool. And someone might argue, well, I helped pay for the pool, I should be able to go into the pool whenever I want. That's not the case. We don't operate like that. We've never operated like that. And the argument that we should suddenly start operating like that is a bit odd to me. You might think it's an extreme reaction to arrest her, but again, if it's closed, they can't get her off the playground. What would you want? And do you want the police to just manhandle her, just grab her and all the other protesters and physically throw them onto the grass? The only resolution to the situation, if you kind of study it and you look at the different externalities that were there, was an arrest, kind of disperse the group, help them recognize that the police were going to enforce this law. That's kind of what had to happen. And so I don't find that just because it's a stupid law that it's worthy of deliberate flaunting and then an expectation by the police officers that those police officers should therefore just ignore the law and not enforce it. I don't hold with that, especially since I am in a big favor of the perpetuation of the rule of law, especially when it comes to immigration. A lot of conservatives are like that. We don't allow people to just flaunt the law to get into the country whenever they want, simply because the immigration process is broken, which we all recognize. So if we're going to take that stance when it comes to immigration, we should probably take that stance when it comes to this particular case as well. Now to kind of touch on the constitutional aspect of it. As far as I can tell, there are no constitutional rights for an individual to go to the playground for recreational use. I don't know of any constitutional amendment that allows that. Certainly not for the ability to just kind of decompress. That is not part of the Constitution. Now, there is a part of the Constitution that protects individuals who want to protest and seek redress from the government, and that's in the First Amendment, right? The right to peacefully assemble, to petition the government for redress. That was the original argument that I believe was put out there by the Idaho Freedom Foundation, which was that it was a playdate protest, a protest of the governor's stay-at-home order. Ironically, I don't believe that that really applies in this particular case, partly because this amendment has been interpreted by the Supreme Court and by a variety of other sources to only extend to the public square, right? We don't allow you to protest wherever you want. You can't protest in my living room, right? So we respect the right of private property. We also recognize that there are certain aspects of public land that you also don't have a right to immediately protest in, right? You can't just walk into an army base to protest the government. National security issues. We have defined it only to be areas of public land that are considered part of the public square, right? A public forum. And if I were to ask an individual on the street, if I were to ask any of you to name a place that would qualify as the public square, I'm pretty sure the last thing you would mention would be the local city playground. That's just not an aspect of the public square. That's not something we've kind of determined should be part of the public square. So I don't see how this could affect the right to peaceably assemble, especially since they could protest 5 feet away on the grass. The city still has an allowance for them to do so. It doesn't dramatically affect the manner in which they're protesting. And the object that they would be protesting would still be something that they could argue for upon the grass, right? They weren't even arrested for the thing that they were protesting against. They weren't arrested for violating the stay-at-home order. They were arrested for going onto this public playground when it was closed. So I don't see how any of these situations violate her basic constitutional rights. I don't see how it's just because it's a law that they might disagree with, that somehow they have the right to not only flaunt it, but to expect law enforcement to ignore it. That's not how we operate in this country. And so with all these situations, she really did deserve to be arrested, and there's no way around that. She broke the law. It was a city ordinance, and it's something that they can theoretically deal with. They should be able to deal with. This isn't a case of violating constitutional rights. It's just a case of them being stupid and deliberately throwing it in the face of law enforcement, who gave them plenty of outs. I want to touch on two things real quick. One, it's important to consider, as I've seen a lot of people post on Facebook, what this would look like if it was somebody of a different race, specifically a minority group. If this person had been a minority, how would people have reacted differently? I haven't seen too many arguments saying that conservatives would act differently, partly because there's an ideological association. Because she's a libertarian, she's also an anti-vaxxer, she's totally against government restrictions, government intervention in her life. There's a sympathetic movement amongst libertarians in the conservative movement, and I don't think that would be impacted whether or not she was black, white, or Asian. I don't think it would matter if she was Latino or any other kind of race. I think people still would have identified with her from that particular libertarian contingent within our movement, our conservative movement and party. I do think that there would be a difference in reaction amongst the left, right? You have this mother going with her children to a public playground, and depending on the amount of video that you had seen, the amount of video that was available on Facebook or social media, I could easily see how major media outlets might run with this, considering that a majority white city government, a white police officer, were troubling this minority mother, if this was a case of them being a minority, and I could see how that would be blown out of proportions. And the last thing I want to mention is, it's not appropriate really to compare Sarah Brady, despite the fact that she performed a rather idiotic action, to Lori Vallow, for example, or Carol Baskins, right? She's not being accused of murder, right? There's a big difference between going onto a public park that's been closed and potentially having fed your husband to tigers. I mean, there's something vastly different about that. Now, you might disagree with it, and you might think that, oh, because of COVID-19, that she could theoretically kill someone, but there's a difference between the deliberate intention to kill someone, right, and feed them to giant cats, and then the case of you just wanting to go to a playground, either to protest the stay-at-home order or to just be there with your children. It's not appropriate to compare them across, and you really do have to think about what this might be like for those children associated with her, the friends and family, her husband, individuals who, because of her rather idiotic action, are now seeing their mother, their spouse, or their friend being compared with outright murderers. I understand that's kind of funny. It's kind of like talking about how Trump wanted people to inject Lysol into their veins. Like, he never actually said that. He did say that they should figure out a way that they could bring disinfectant inside the body. Very stupid, I'm going to give you that, but it's not like suggesting someone should be on a bleach IV drip. So you can recognize two things at once. Sarah Brady was idiotic in this particular case. She's not a murderer. Donald Trump, for example, was pretty stupid in what he said, and at the same time, he wasn't encouraging people to drink Lysol. So it's just one of those things where you have to kind of look at the actual aspect of the situation, see it for what it is, and give as much leeway as you can, while at the same time condemning everything that should be condemned. So we hope you enjoy this. If you want to see more content, this is a mini episode in the podcast series that we are putting out there. We've got a couple full-length episodes that you can find on our website or on YouTube. We'll probably have links in the description below. Check it out. Please share this with your friends, comment, like, subscribe, do whatever you can do to help spread the word about this particular channel, this particular Facebook page, or our website. We really do want to get out there, and if you want to help us, let us know. We'd like to have you join our team. Thanks.